Scripture reading, Luke chapter 9, verses 10 through 17. It is written, And the apostles, when they had returned, told him all they had done. Then he took them and went aside privately into a deserted place belonging to the city called Bethsaida. But when the multitude knew it, they followed him, and he received them and spoke to them about the kingdom of God and healed those who had need of healing. When the day began to wear away, the 12 came and said to him, Send the multitude away, that they may go into the surrounding towns and country and lodge and get provisions, for we are in a deserted place here. But he said to them, You give them something to eat. And they said, We have no more than 5 loaves and 2 fish, unless we go and buy food for all these people. For there were about 5,000 men. Then he said to the disciples, Make them sit down in groups of 50. And they did so, and made them all sit down. Then he took the 5 loaves, 2 fish, and looking up to heaven, he blessed and broke them, and gave them to the disciples to set before the multitude. They all ate, were filled. 12 baskets of the leftover fragments were taken up by them.
Good morning. Incredibly excited about the opportunity we're about to have in a few moments. I want to challenge you as we look at this context. Somebody said, wait a minute, we looked at the feeding of the 5,000 last week. Yes, we did. John chapter 6, he's the bread of life. I want to look at it a little different perspective when we look at it this morning. There are a couple of passages that are really, really meaningful. And one of the things that I find interesting at this is the disciples come up. Here's this awkward situation. You got 5,000 plus individuals here, and the disciples know they're going to get hungry. What are we going to do? And the first time Jesus looked at them and simply said, I'm paraphrasing, but it says, you feed them. Have you ever been in a situation where you had to provide people for you didn't expect? Now, ladies have all been there. Maybe some of the guys have been there. The only similitude to that to a guy is when you go out somewhere to eat and a guy's sitting there and he realizes, hey, I got to pick up the tab for the crew. You've been there. You've done that. I see some of you smiling. You know what that's like. When people show up unannounced. Well, there's a unique thing. This is not unannounced that's going to happen maybe later this afternoon and later in our lives. Jesus looked at the disciples and said, Me you have not always, but the poor you have always. Saw a blurb yesterday about the number of individuals who live in poverty in just the United States of America, and it blew my mind. I have no clue. Most of us are so sheltered and so well fed that it just doesn't even dawn on us. Powerful thing, and I like he set them down in 50s to do it. When I first saw the sign-up list out in the foyer, I think that was the number I came to when I started counting down. Right around 50, maybe a few more than that. That 50 can make a difference. I found it interesting that Jesus sat them down in 50s. And, there's a couple of passages I want to flip through rather quickly. In Deuteronomy chapter 15 and verse 7 is one of the first ones I want to read. And listen, this was one of the premier challenges. And there's a lot in chapter 15 about this, but I want to focus on just verse number 7. If there is among you a poor man of your brethren, whether within the gates of your land, which the Lord your God is giving you, you shall not harden your heart, nor shut your hand from your poor brother. But you shall open your hand wide to him, and willingly lend him sufficient for his needs, whatever he needs. Beware lest there be a wicked thought in your heart, saying, the 7th year, the year of release is at hand, and your eye will be evil against your poor brother, and you give him nothing. And he cried against the Lord to you, and it becomes sin among you. It's sinful not to help somebody. That's what Moses says in Deuteronomy chapter 15. And you can't claim the year of Jubilee. I wish we could bring the year of Jubilee back. I don't know about y'all, but I don't know what you know about the details of that. Every 50 years, debt's canceled. Woo! Maybe we should mention that to the next administration. I don't think it'll go anywhere. But what an incredible, you just kind of start all over. Now, for those of you, and as we kind of like with those that are frugal and plan and say, well, that's not fair. Sorry, that's the way God did it. He decided to make it a level playing field every 50 years. Kind of settle things. In Proverbs 28 and verse 27, there's a couple of thoughts. And in Deuteronomy 4, stay at Deuteronomy 15. You're already there. If you read through verse 10 of chapter 7, I started to read there. He says, you shall surely give to him, and your heart should not be grieved when you give to him, because for this thing the Lord your God will bless you in all your works and in all to which you put in your hand. Do not shut your hand. Do not shut your eyes. Proverbs 28 is the other passage I want you to turn. Because this is what happens to us. We live in a world, maybe we don't shut our eyes anymore. But what we do is we avert our glance, whether it's at the stoplight or we may change we kind of use the remote control, and when we see something needed, we can just go right past it, reprogram it, whatever. But 28:27, here's what the proverb writer said. He who gives to the poor will not lack, but he who hides his eyes, one translation says shuts his eyes, will have many curses. Oh, I got to keep looking. I got to keep aware. And my favorite one is in Isaiah 58 and verse 10. Isaiah 58 and verse number 10. And I'm reading it from the New King James, but I'm going to read it from the New King James because I know that's what everybody has. Isaiah 58 verse 10. If you extend your soul to the hungry, and satisfy the afflicted soul, then your light shall shine in the darkness, and your darkness shall be as the noonday. One translation says, empty yourself. Let it go. I apologize for the song that just hit some of your brains. That's not what I'm talking about. Empty yourselves. Why is this the case? Well, as we look at the story of Jesus, and I think I've got a couple of pictures here. Go ahead. God says, I want you to empty your hand. Whatever you got there, I want you to give it. I want you to share. And it's in that motion. Why would he do that? Well, in Deuteronomy chapter 8, verses 1 through 11, there's a challenge that is given by God, and it's a reminder in reference to where he's taken them from. Every commandment which I command you today, you must be careful to observe. Because in verse 3 in chapter 8, he says this, Deuteronomy 8:3, so he humbled you, allowed you to hunger, and fed you with manna which you did not know, nor did the fathers know, that he might make you know that man shall not live by bread alone, but man lives by every word that proceeds from the mouth of God. Not only that, in verse 6 or verse 4, your garments did not wear out on you, nor did your foot swell these 40 years. I never used to worry about my feet. 55, I don't know what it's done to me, but now my feet hurt. Don't laugh, Graham. It's not that funny. 55, what is it? When we get, our feet wear out. They swell. They hurt when we walk. Just not right. It happens. 40 years in the wilderness, it didn't happen. They had no Dr. Scholl's. They had God. Took care of them. He did it in 1 Samuel. We're not going to turn to all these for time's sake. 1 Samuel 21:6, he took care of David in the temple. 1 Kings 17, jot these down. I want you to look at them later. Took care of Elijah. Not only once he fed him with the ravens, then there was a widow that didn't have any food. He went into her house, and all of a sudden, she had a perpetual source of food. Because the man of God was in her house. 2 Kings chapter 5, my favorite one. Got to turn there, not going to miss it. 2 Kings chapter 5. This is a cool story. It's not a cool story in the content that it's in, because it's a story about a great famine that comes and people are dying all over the place. And in 2 Kings 5, there's a group of lepers. in 2 Kings 5. And it's those lepers that when they get there and there's a situation, there's 4 of them. And they say, if we stay here, we die. If we stay, they go into the Syrian camp. And when you go into the Syrian camp, they figure we're all going to be killed. Well, something happens. God delivers everybody to go in, and they go into every tent and they get food. God has always. Jesus fasts for 40 days and 40 nights in the wilderness. The angels come and feed him. God says, I will provide. How am I going to do that? He's going to use us. You feed them. He used a little boy's lunch. 5. Now, this is an artist rendition. Some of you go, is that what it really looked like? I have no clue. Okay? Getting there, all of a sudden, Peter, James, John, Andrew, Bartholomew, you feed them. They go look and give them some credit. Peter, I think, is the one, is that right? I believe in Luke. He's the one that brings what we found. You feed them. They at least made an effort. All they found was 5 loaves and 2 fish. Now, how do you think this little kid felt? Now, this one's smiling. I brought my lunch. What are you going to do with what I've got? 5 loaves and 2 fish. What I hope this communicates in just the next few minutes, because Jesus does something with 5 loaves and 2 fish that he still does to us, that if we let him, it'll make a difference. Number 1, Jesus still breaks. What's the significance of that when he takes the 5 loaves and 2, because I can see Peter going, all right, you can break it as many times as you want to. There are 5,000 people out here. Can't you I can hear Peter. Look at him, Lord, that's going to be a mighty small pieces. Nothing small if you let God get a hold of it. It was in the hands of the one who had said, let there be light, who breathed life into mankind. And in those same hands, 5 loaves and 2 fish not only fed a multitude, they took up, get this, leftovers. You knew that was a group of the church getting together if there's always leftovers. There'll be leftovers this afternoon. There's pizza. As soon as we're done here, God's providing for you. There's no reason for you to go anywhere to get anything. Some of you may need to for dietary reasons. I understand that. I know of a couple that aren't going to be able to, pizza isn't for everybody. But letting God, my question is, have you let God break you? That's the only way your eyes and heart stays open. Because it's too easy in the world in which we live. I got what I need. I can't see. Well, they're still there. Jesus blesses. Remember the promise made in Deuteronomy? If you give, you're going to get it back. It's not like when I want to do something. I wonder what the little boy felt like when he started handing him back and said, man, this wasn't what it looked like when it left. See, I've got a feeling, this is just me, the text doesn't say this, but I've got a feeling that what they got back after Jesus got through breaking it and then blessing it was better than any, because they kept coming back. You remember after that? And he said, you're coming, but you're coming because of the loaves and the fishes. You don't come back just because it's any fine restaurant. Why do you go back? It's because the experience you had was a good one. When Jesus does it, and the more significant thing about this, Jesus broke it and he blessed it. Now you're going to not understand this one, but he believed in the disciples. You feed them. Do you notice Jesus didn't go around and hand to every individual? Who did he give it to? He gave it to the disciples. Then it went from the disciples' hands to the other individuals. So in essence, what they saw was not Jesus feeding them, but the disciples. Peter, James, John, Andrew, Bartholomew, Philip. They're the ones going around and then going around afterward. This just boggles my mind. If 5,000 plus are fed, they take up 12. There's no accident that it was 12. We've been on Wednesday night in Revelation, symbolically looking at the book of Revelation. 12 tribes of Israel, 12 apostles, God's people throughout the generations. God just wanted to, through his son at this moment, to let him know, I'm still feeding people that need it. I fed the multitudes in the wilderness. I'll feed individuals now. In fact, I'll keep doing it as long as you'll keep trusting me. Why did Jesus say you feed them? Because he knew they could if they would just work through him. Listen to the words of this song. Now I've got one final challenge. He will set the sheep on his right hand, but the goats on the left. Then the king will say to those on his right hand, "Come, you blessed of my Father, for the kingdom is prepared for you from the foundation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me food, thirsty, and you gave me drink. I was a stranger, you took me in. I was naked, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you visited me. I was in prison, and you came to see me." Then the righteous will answer him, saying, "Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you drink? When did we see you stranger and take you in, naked and clothe you? When did we see you sick or in prison and come to you?" And the king will answer and say to them, "Surely as you did it to the least of these, my brethren, you did it to me." Will you feed them? That's what this is about. The opportunity today to do what he asks us to do. We need to help in any other way. A member of the family of God, penitent faith, confession, and baptism, rededication to a relationship with him. That's why I have this moment and this song. Would you come as we stand and as we sing?